Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome. Welcome to the Summer of Access webinar series. We're going to continue today with a busy person's guide to accessibility testing, brought to you by L'Etoile Education Accessibility Learning and Development Community. We are very excited about this session. We have a wonderful topic for you and a fantastic presenter with a ton of great resources. I'm just so thrilled. So welcome everyone. And I'm going to get us started here because it is on the hour. So as I said, the Summer of Access webinar series, a busy person's guide to accessibility testing. We have a link for you. Lyssa's put a link in the chat so you can grab that. You can also say hello. Where are you calling in from? Let us know. Where are you in the world? I am Nicole L'Etoile. I am here in Rhode Island, where I'm based. And I'm just thrilled to have you. So welcome back. I see some familiar names and yeah, some return and some new. So let's just get started here. A couple of reminders about our Zoom meeting here. Please stay muted unless speaking. We're not in a webinar format, so it is a meeting. Use the chat or raise hand if you have a question. And if you'd like to use the chat, I'll monitor that and we'll make sure your questions get answered either at some point during the session or after. But as you're coming in, hello, welcome everyone. Please say hello where you're calling from. The recordings will be shared in our Accessibility Learning and Development Slack community. Live captions and transcripts are available for today's session. I'd like to welcome our presenter. That was, oh my gosh, I haven't had a New York accent in about 20 years. It comes out every once in a while, so there it was. All right. Welcome, Lyssa Prince, Digital Accessibility Specialist at WebAIM. Lyssa is a digital accessibility specialist at WebAIM who loves making digital accessibility more approachable. She specializes in training and creating resources that help people go from overwhelmed to empowered. Please join me in welcoming Lyssa to the stage. Please take it away.
Thank you so much. I always so shy when people introduce me, especially when they say things like that, which I told you to say, which is funny, right? So anyway, let me get my share going before I just jump in because I tend to do that. All right. All right. So, whoops, that was already where I needed it to be. All right. Hopefully everybody's seeing what is on my screen. I've got my slide deck up. I'll be using something called WooClap today. So they're just a couple polls. It's not anything fancy. We won't do a ton of interaction with WooClap. It's actually something that I just found out that our university has. So I'm trying it out today. So you guys are my guinea pigs. Nicole did put the Google Doc back in the chat for you all, but this is something that we'll use kind of as we go along. This is a very interactive session, not with WooClap necessarily, but we're going to go through and actually do some testing. So I know not everyone has a double screen, but also you can kind of just forget about me and just listen to what I'm saying and hopefully kind of navigate to the pages we'll go through and just kind of do some testing on your own. But as Nicole said, this session is called A Busy Person's Guide to Accessibility Testing. And I have a lot of reasons for wanting to do this kind of presentation, but I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story to get us started. And I think that we can all agree that accessibility testing is a little bit hard, right? I wish I could see more faces, but no pressure. You can turn your camera on or off. But if you want to, like, put a reaction in the chat or just kind of react with your little Zoom controls, I would love to see just how you're feeling about this. Because when I first got started with accessibility, um, it was many years ago at this point, but I got into my full-time accessibility job more around 2018, and then I was kind of responsible for creating a whole assessment process. So where I was at was the state of Oklahoma. So I know there's someone from Oklahoma here. Hello, Kayleen. That's awesome that you joined. It's going to be really hot today, so hopefully everyone's staying cool if you're in Oklahoma or anywhere else that's been having all these wild heat waves. Anyway, so the thing I have on the screen is a couple of park rangers. And I kind of use this as an example to sort of represent how I felt when I was working in the state of Oklahoma for Oklahoma Able Tech. We were sort of responsible for any public entity. They could come to us for help with training on accessibility and also that assessment for any of their websites or web applications. So it was only a two-person team. And it felt a lot like we were trying to patrol a giant national park with just two of us, right? So I guess just a state park, but hey, we're going bigger here. So anyway, it was a little bit rough. And we did offer like a full-on compliance level assessment that was for a cost, but we really needed something that was going to help other folks who kind of just were coming to us, needing to kind of take advantage of the free side of our services and things like that. So this is really what caused me to kind of start testing this way on my own and hopefully, start to now share the word a little bit about it at this point. So I want to ask you first before we kind of move on, like how comfortable do you actually feel conducting accessibility tests on your websites or projects? So this is where I am using WooClap. So if you want to participate in this and I am told it is accessible, if it's not, please message me and let me know. But the code for WooClap to get in is AXMYHYL, and that's all caps. All right, so we have some people coming on. Thank you, Nicole. I knew there was something I was forgetting to tell you that needed a link, so. All right, while the responses are coming in, let me check one thing. Got about 18 folks participating so far. Want to at least get to maybe 24 or so. So 3 more of you maybe. Also, I realized there should have been a 4th option. I'm not going to lie to you all, life has been lifing a lot lately, so I feel like I missed a 4th option here, but I am so sorry. If anybody feels like they're just like super out of the park, like super comfortable, then go ahead and pop that in the chat. We'll do this on the fly. All right, but it looks like everybody's kind of slowing down responding. We've got uh some very comfortable 3 of you. We have some not comfortable. Let me get Zoom out of the way too. We've got 2 that are not comfortable at all, and then 2 that are about 14 that are somewhat comfortable. So it looks like the majority of people are kind of in the middle, which is what I expected. So somewhat comfortable is a great place to be for this presentation. It's really going to be great for hopefully any of you on any of the spectrum. We got one more that looks like came in at very comfortable. That's awesome. Okay, one other question I have for you real quickly. You can put more than one response in here, I believe. So if you have more than one struggle, please go ahead and add more than one. But generally speaking, what is your biggest struggle with accessibility testing? Using screen readers. Okay. Oh, not having the proper training. Yeah. Ooh, we've got someone in the chat saying understanding how to implement the rules with storyline. I bet that's another layer there. Yeah, totally. Knowing if I've caught everything. Oh, someone's saying their company says they don't need it. Funny story. Okay. Awesome. LMS limitations. Oh yeah, that's a really big one too. I know a lot of tools don't really. Okay. You guys are putting some great suggestions in here. So fortunately, this is about an hour, so we don't have a ton of time to kind of, catch all of these, but this is really helpful for me to kind of know where you are, what you're working with. And then also, we always use this data to kind of help us understand what people need as far as training. So just know that we're listening to this kind of stuff and we can hopefully create some resources that help with this. All right. Wonderful feedback. All right, I'm going to move on to the next slide. I think it's probably going to cut you off. But again, if you have anything else, you can add it to the chat. Or I'll have my email in at the end, so you can just email me directly if you have anything else that you just are dying to say. I would love to hear it. All right, so the goal of this session is truly to leave you with a high impact accessibility testing process that exposes the most common major barriers. So this is by no means a comprehensive WCAG audit. Again, I kind of started using this sort of method when I was out of time myself as a 2-person team or on a 2-person team. And also when we were kind of like, comparing products to buy. This is another series of tests that can help expose the most common barriers. And I also wanted to let you all know, this has been several years now, but I actually sort of based some of these things that I pulled into this high impact test from some research done by DQ and Tenon. So this was back in around like 2020, 2021, I believe. And I also kind of learned from the WebAIM screen reader results. I just joined WebAIM about 3 months ago. I've used WebAIM tools pretty much my entire accessibility career. So I was telling Nicole, it's kind of hard for me to say these are our tools now, but here we are. All right, so that research, though, what one quick minor point about that was that it was actually about automated testing, and I've included the DQ research paper in my resources section at the end of this deck if you're curious about it. But it was trying to determine how much accessibility testing could be done by automated tools. So they were trying to put some numbers. They were using their reports that were done with a combination of manual and automated testing. So that was the kind of lens that research was done in. But what it did is kind of expose the most commonly found errors across both manual and automated testing. So that's what I kind of used for myself to just say, all right, these are the things that really present pretty commonly across most things, most web pages, LMS content, anything. And then use that to sort of hone in. And it also helped me. I know there were several people that mentioned like you're worried about not getting everything. It helped me as somebody kind of newer to this, have a place to start because going through a whole WCAG checklist can be really, really overwhelming. Um, so that's kind of my lens that I brought into this, and that's why I'm here today. But again, I want to mention this is not a comprehensive WCAG audit. So for compliance reasons, this is not necessarily what you want to use. The resources at the end contain another high impact checklist. That's actually the W3C quick checks. And I want to kind of mention this because you may find that something on your content, like maybe you do have really interactive content using Articulate or something like that. This could have some things you find maybe commonly wrong with stuff that you're working on, and you want to add something to your own checklist. So use this as a starting point, but it's not necessarily, the only high impact checklist that you can use. So I wanted to mention that really quickly as well. So our agenda, we're going to kind of move off into the bulk of testing at this point, but we'll set up our testing tools and like get our review pages open. We'll go through the 7 accessibility checks, and then we'll review the report, kind of discuss the scoping. So that third portion is really, really brief because the focus of the testing portion is just on a single page. But I at least want to leave you with a little bit of idea of what you want to do to kind of expand out how many pages you need to review, et cetera. So that's where we'll head. All right, now to the demo. So that Google Doc is where we'll start. I'm gonna get my version open. You have a few tabs on the left-hand side. We start out with the tools and test pages, so that's where we're going to start. And then our testing checkpoints are kind of nested underneath a single tab over in our Google Doc as well. So I've chosen in this version of the presentation to use the web version of the wave testing tool. But is there anybody, if you have not used the wave tool at all, can you raise your hand for me, please? Okay, got a couple. Cool, cool. And no worries on that at all. All right, cool. Just a few of you, which is totally what I expected. I just wanted to make sure I knew kind of how much to say out loud about the Wave tool. All right. So there are 2 ways you can use Wave. If you go to the link that I have in the tools section, the Wave Web Accessibility Evaluation Tool, that's what it stands for. It is an acronym. You'll get to a page that has the like a web page address field in it. So we're going to use this version, and this just allows you to pop a URL in, and then it'll run in that little browser tab. You also have the option, if you're not familiar with it, to add it as an extension. If any of you already have the extension, feel free to use it. You just may get different results than I do. Sometimes that happens. And of course, if there are differences, you can let me know because that is something we would maybe want to fix in our tool. But anyway, this is the version we're going to use just for ease of use today and not having to tell anyone how to download the extension. But this page does go through that for you if you have the extension or you don't have the extension you needed. It's right here. All right, I'm going to go now grab back to the Google Doc, and I'm going to grab the test page link. So we're going to use this Accessible University demo, the inaccessible version, and that's the thing we're going to test with. So I've copied that link, and I'm going to pause really quickly because I do have 2 other tools listed here. So for the sake of time, again, we only have an hour. I wish I could do this as a whole workshop sometime. Maybe I'll get to. But we have the Ally bookmarklets page, and there is a specifically one called the Focus bookmarklet. There's tons of bookmarklets out like that. This could come in handy when we're testing for keyboard accessibility because sometimes we fail one of the checks and then we can't say where we are, so we can't do the other checks. I also have the WebAIM contrast checker there. There is a contrast checker built into the Wave tool, so we likely won't use the contrast checker, but I want to let you know that that's there in case you aren't familiar, and you just want to use that standalone instead of having to use it within the Wave tool. So those are the other two links that are on that page. So let's go pop in our link. So I'm back to the Wave page, and we're going to pop in our Accessible University link. And we'll open Wave up. So I'm going to pause and make sure. I'm going to check the chat real quick. Okay. Nicole, it's great to have somebody pop in links in. All right, so if anybody has any trouble getting this open, just let us know. But hopefully you should have the Accessible University page open in the browser, and we have our little Wave toolbar that's open on the left-hand side. All right, so to give you a really quick demo, or I guess tour is a better word, of the Wave toolbar, we have a lot of things going on. So there's a lot of information here if you're not used to seeing it. But we have a details tab on the left-hand side, and this is where you're going to see those errors and alerts pop up. It also just gives you a lot of information about the site. So that's in the feature section and the structure section. And then ARIA, we can just forget about that for today. So let's not worry about that one at all. We have our reference tab, and this basically will show up if you have an error selected. So it'll give you some information. I used Wave again a long time ago. I always liked this tool because it does try to educate folks in addition to showing you some of the errors. It's not trying to kind of assume you know things. So that's one thing I've always loved Wave for. We have our order tool. We'll use that for some of our checks. We have our structure tool. This shows headings and any navigation landmarks and things like that. So that navigation landmark piece is a little more technical. We're not worried about that today, but this is, we're going to look for heading things. And we have our contrast tab on the right-hand side of that tab list, and it's going to show you any contrast errors that you find and also include a little mini version of the contrast checker I mentioned earlier. Okay. So now that we've gone through a little Wave tour, we are going to use each of these tabs except for the reference one. But again, that one's there if you ever kind of need to learn more about what these arrows are. That's going to pop up and have information in it if you have one of those selected. Say, for instance, I click on this, we can click reference. It'll go over and be populated. Okay. Now let's get started with our checking. Got 40 minutes to do this, so we'll see, or yeah, approximately. I'm going to try to leave some time at the end for questions, but also one thing I will say, sometimes with this sort of content, it's a little easier for me to answer questions if you ask about it in the time that I'm kind of demoing it. So feel free to pop questions in the chat. Nicole, if there's anything I'm not seeing, just interrupt me and we'll go from there. I like to keep these pretty informal. Okay, so we're going to start with our checkpoints. This tab, by the way, just has the testing checkpoints sort of listed out. So we're going to start with our keyboard checking. And you may hate me, so I technically said there are 7 checks on this high impact testing framework that I'm working with, but they're kind of sub checkpoints. So, you can at me if you want. That's totally fine. For the keyboard, we have about 4 of those. So what I've kind of done here, this is just for the sake of kind of demoing. I've written this out like the how to test, and then we'll kind of like write down our findings. We may kind of not do a ton with this at this point, just because again, it's more important to kind of get through the test. But just so you know, this is there for you if you'd like to type in your findings as you're going. Okay, so for our keyboard testing, we want to make sure the page is navigable via the keyboard. So our tests are going to look like this. We're going to put our cursor either in the address bar, or if we can, there's something called focus priming. You can kind of put your cursor at the top. This is honestly just best done with the mouse, to be honest. I'm not sure you can even do it with the keyboard very easily. If someone knows a better way to do that with the keyboard, just let me know. But this is basically just to get your focus where you need it to be so that when we start using the keyboard, we can actually just get to where we need to go faster into the page content. So we're going to ask ourselves 4 questions. One, can I reach everything that's interactive? Two, can I activate buttons with enter or space and visit links also with enter? And three, can I see where I am while I'm tabbing? So is there some kind of box or something around the button or the link that lets me know where I'm at visually? And then the last one is, do I get to everything in the order that I expect? So those are the four questions we kind of are asking ourselves. As you're first learning, I feel like a lot of people just kind of do these one by one, but you'll find, especially like as you do this more and more, and for those of like most of you said you're pretty comfortable. I'm imagining you're kind of doing this all at once as you're tabbing through, right? So you're kind of keeping that all in your head while you're navigating via keyboard. So we're going to go back to our wave report and I was trying to use the tab name there. And we're going to start using our keyboard. And I'm actually going to open that page separately just so I don't have the wave stuff kind of hanging out. We don't necessarily need wave on while we're keyboard testing. In fact, it could be a little bit interrupting, a little bit frustrating because you're going to actually be able to tab through everything in wave because that is at least mostly keyboard accessible. All right, so I'm going to put my focus up here in the address bar. And Chrome started doing this fun new thing where it pops up this ask Google about this page thing. So you actually have to hit the escape key to get that to go away. So I just hit escape and now that went away and now we'd be able to just kind of navigate through. So we're going to start hitting our tab key and let's just see what we find. So first it goes to the edit bookmark piece over there. So we're still kind of in the toolbar and that's where that focus priming can come in handy because you can kind of put it more underneath there. But if you wanted to do that, all you'd have to do is kind of put your mouse over here in the top left corner and just that way we're starting kind of in on the keyboard content. All right, so now we're going to see what we see. And we've got the home button that's kind of up in the top. We have the before and after and then the info. So those are really like not part of the piece we're actually going to test because those are just kind of navigation to get you through this demo site. But we're going to start in with the about. So I am now on the About tab and looks like I'm kind of at the News tab, Governance, Diversity, Contact Us. But we're going through each of these top tabs one by one. Okay, so I'm going to pause here. And if we go back to our questions that we're asking ourselves, so we've got, can I reach everything that's interactive? So far, I think that's a yes, right? We're not necessarily going to try to activate within our space. I think that's something that you can likely take care of on your own, just again for the sake of time. Can I see where I'm at while I'm tabbing? How do we feel about that one? How is this doing so far? I'll go back and repeat that a little bit so that we can see what's going on. So what do we see when we are tabbing through here? Got some low contrast and no visible border. Perfect. Okay. So thing about accessibility testing, it does get complex kind of fast, but what we are looking for, if we're trying to simplify things here, we're just trying to make sure that we can easily see where we are. So we're looking for a box of some sort, so that visible border. So Nicole mentioned that, and that is missing entirely. So now we know that this one's failing, and we can kind of keep going. The color change is an issue too, so we could talk about contrast for that one. We'll get to that check later. And this might be where, just by the way, as an evaluator, I might be kind of jotting things down in a little notepad. I'm not taking, serious notes at this point. I'm just saying, oh, I did notice the contrast thing there because you're going to find these things kind of all in one as you're doing this testing. Unfortunately, when you're doing accessibility testing, it's not like you're just finding one issue at a time. I feel like that's really rare. So anyway, I might kind of be making notes if this were me, just as I'm kind of going. But for now, we're focused on that keyword accessibility testing, and contrast is not something we're testing. Okay, let's keep going past the menu. And whoa, I don't know where it landed. So we went through parking, and then I have no idea where it is. That's where this force focus style bookmark that I mentioned that's linked in that Google Doc could be helpful. So right now, if I turn that on, I just activated it by clicking it. We now know that we're down in the content underneath the slideshow on this click here link. And then we have another, see, click here link. I think it's kind of hiding that. And then we have one more click here link. And then it gets over into the video. So we might have to kind of toggle this focus bookmarklet on and off to see this, but primarily, let me see here. Let me start this over. So I want to get past these links. So I knew there were 3 of them. And now if I turn that off, we're kind of seeing there is a little bit of a border around the video play button. There's also a little bit of a border around the volume slider, and then the volume toggle, and then the full screen button, and then the settings, and then same thing. So there's a little bit of a border on that one. So, we're finding right now that not every piece of this site is missing a visible focus indicator. That's the issue that we're gonna, so basically, can I see where I'm at? Not on most of this. Let's get past the video. Now we're to the form fields. So it does change the cursor. It's blinking now, but I feel like there should probably be a border around this as well, because that's not necessarily something that's too obvious. And we'd have to test contrast with that too. But again, it gets complex fast. All right, so now we're going to get down to the computer science, engineering. Those do not have any visible focus indicators at all. The submit button, it looks like it takes that border away. So that's something we could talk about. But overall, if we go back to our checkpoints, can I see where I'm at while I'm tabbing? So our finding could be for that one that the majority of the links and buttons are missing visible focus indicators. That would be the issue we are going to check out. Now, if we were to want to check the other sort of things, like I said, number 2, I feel like that's something that most people know how to test, so I didn't want to cover that too well. But can I reach everything that's interactive? Let's go back and think about that one. I'm going to turn on my force focus style on this one just so that I can make sure if we do find an issue that we know where we're at. So we're going to go through, and they actually changed this page too, and they used to have an error that was better for this particular checkpoint, but they've changed it. So I am seeing, just making sure I know where I'm at. Okay. So we went from visitors and all the way down through that. And then the next thing we went to is the click here. Is there anything interactive that we missed? I'm going to keep going through slowly. We're get to the video now. And then we're over to the apply now fields. Is there anything interactive that was missed? The CAPTCHA. Okay, that's an interesting one. Yeah. We could talk about whether that's interactive or not, but oh, and there was somebody that I missed that. My eyes glitched out. The carousel menu. So yeah, we could talk about the CAPTCHA, but the CAPTCHA is technically just an image. So that technically isn't interactive. So we likely wouldn't need to get to it with the keyboard, but most CAPTCHAs are interactive. So that was a good catch. But in this case, it is just an image, which presents other problems we'll get to here in a bit. Okay, so if we go back up, like Hillary mentioned, we are not seeing any of the carousel anything in the as we're keyboard tabbing through. So we have about 6 things we're missing, the left and the right arrows, and then the little slideshow buttons. So this is where you can kind of, when you're first getting into a site, if you're not familiar with it, it's often a good idea to take a mouse over it and kind of see what you're supposed to actually be able to interact with, because unfortunately you might just miss something if you're not doing it that way because, well, it's not keyboard accessible. So in this case, we would want the arrows and those little slideshow changer buttons to be keyboard accessible, and they currently are not. So that's another thing we can go back to our Google Doc and add. So slideshow buttons are not keyboard accessible. And we may want to expand this out too. So I'm doing this finding piece quickly. And at this point, I also wanted to kind of mention this is actually representing pretty well what I am doing when I'm testing anyway. When I'm making a report to hand over to a developer, designer, somebody who's going to need to make these changes eventually, I'm likely going to be a lot more descriptive, and I'll include something like the summary that I kind of included here, as well as like a suggested fix. And that works particularly well if you need to specifically tell them you need to do X rather than just, hey, it needs to look kind of like this or something like that. I also include videos and screenshots a lot of the time in reports. So again, we don't have time to go through and do that, but that is something that I highly recommend adding. The more detail you can give about where something is located and the true issue and how to fix it, the more likely it is to be fixed. But at this point in my review, I'm likely just jotting something down. No, I'm going to go through and make it more descriptive later on. So, another tip, I guess, trick that I found for myself is if I leave myself enough notes on how to go find it after I'm done doing my review, then it's likely going to be findable by somebody else, right? So leave yourself enough notes to where you can go back and add all those details later, and you're hopefully helping yourself out as well as the person who's going to be reviewing this after you hand it over to them. Okay, any questions? That is a quick and not quick and dirty. I knew we'd spend the most time on keyboard. That is unfortunately one of the things that takes the longest. We could probably do a whole few sessions on keyboard testing. All right, I'm going to move over to headings now. And this one goes a lot faster typically. So for headings, we want to make sure that headings accurately represent the content relationships on the page. So a heading means that content is headed up by some piece of text, right? That's why they're called headings, heading up. Um, so we're going to do a few tests here as well. So one, we want to make sure there even are headings. We're going to make sure that things that look and function like headings are marked as headings. We're going to make sure that heading levels show the relationships between that content. And then we're also going to make sure that things that don't actually head up content aren't marked as headings. So there are 4 kinds of things we're checking in this particular test. Our sample page, unfortunately, is not the best at showing heading errors. And I will fully admit I wanted to make my own testing page and I flat ran out of time, you all. Life has been lifing a lot lately, so I apologize for that, but we'll still be able to go over a lot of it. All right, so for the headings test, we're likely going to start over in our structure tab. So that's where we're going to go first. And all we see in this structure tab are 2 things, navigation and the footer. And those are landmarks. So those are something I mentioned that's a little more technical than we're going to discuss today. But I don't see anything that looks like a heading here. If I scan the page, I would find the same thing. So we have all these icons that get added to the page when we are going through it. There's no headings on there at all. They're going to look like blue icons with H1, H2, H3 with the level of heading that's added. So what I wanted to do with this particular example, I'm going to open the after page, and I've just done that through the link in the top right corner of the page, so very top of the page. And I'm going to take that link and I'm going to open another. All right, so what I've just done is open the accessible version of this demo in the Wave browser tool. So we can kind of see what headings would look like if we had them on here. So if we go over to Structure tab now, and keep in mind this is a good version, so we can still kind of run through our tests because, we want to make sure we're testing everything here. But this is going to be a pass, just so you know. So we have a heading 1 now icon on the Accessible University logo. I don't love that they do that. Again, this is why I wanted to make my own page, but anyway, the logo is actually the heading 1. Then we have our apply now at the bottom. I'm sorry, in the sidebar, and that's the first thing I'm kind of seeing visually. There's another part of WAVE, by the way, if you're curious, you can always turn the styles off, and that's done over in the top portion of the Wave toolbar, kind of above the tabs that we've been working in. And you can see the order that would be read by assistive technology. So this just kind of flattens the page, takes all the good CSS stuff out so that you can check things out. But we would know that apply now sidebar is actually at the end. But that might come into play if we're looking at our structure tab. So I'm going to go over to the structure tab. I'm going to turn the styles back on. And we'll look and see in the main section, it's another landmark. We have a welcome, bienvenido, and can you spot the barriers? Those are our H2, as well as AU enrollment trends, and then one more AU video. And then in the aside, that's what that's called. That's just kind of positioned over there to the right via code, but it technically is last, and that's why it's showing up in the structure pane on the bottom. Anyway, so those relationships are all okay. So what we'd be looking for here are any of these subsections that are marked H2s, or they marked H3 incorrectly, so they would be nested incorrectly under our H1. We typically only want to have one H1 per page. That's not necessarily a WCAG standard, but it is this sort of best practice across the field. So this is the kind of stuff we would use or we would be looking for in the structure. So then we can just go back to our checklist. We know that we've kind of passed all these. I know I'm kind of taking longer than I want to, so I'm going to kind of skip to this, but you have all these here, and we would say this passes, basically, for our headings. All right, any questions on that one? It's a great summary there of the styles pane by Nicole. Thank you. All right. No questions on headings. We'll move over to tables and lists. Again, this one is relatively quick. And I've included those kind of together because they're sort of similar structural texts. It is something that Wave can typically find on its own. So this is where we're going to talk a little bit about errors that it actually pulls up versus just testing it sort of manually like we just did with the heading structure. Oh, and I think I completely forgot. Before I go back into tables and structures, I did want to let you all know Wave can find some heading errors on its own. So it's not just requiring you to do a manual check, but it's going to find things like there aren't any heading structures at all. And that's going to be an alert because Wave cannot for sure determine if that is a true error or not. So the alerts, that's kind of what the difference is between those and errors. Errors are things that Wave can determine with certainty are errors, and then alerts are things that may or may not be actual barriers. So that's something I kind of forgot to point out with the headings piece there. Okay. So now switching back over to tables and lists. What we're looking for in Wave is typically going to fall into the alert section or into the structural elements. So underneath the alerts, we do see that we have one layout table. And if we had scanned the page, we would have likely seen that. And this is where, again, you're going to need to do somewhat of a manual check. If you're seeing something that looks like a table, and there isn't anything either in the alerts or in the structural element section that shows up as a table, then we know we have a problem, right? So we can use Wave not just for displaying errors and alerts, we can also use it to kind of expose some of that structure that is so important to our assistive technology. All right, so in this case, we do have one table. I didn't see any others on this page, so we're just kind of going to focus on this one. And the thing it's telling us is a layout table is present. What that means is that this is saying, I don't have any headers. So if we look at this table, and there's a lot of problems with this table, and again, I think I've failed to mention up to this point too, there is a list of, I'm going to go over to the good version of the demo site. So this is the after version. If you want to use this site to learn more than what I'm able to tell you in this hour, you can always go to this accessible version and then go to the info page and you'll see all the issues laid out. So it's going to go into a lot more detail and find stuff, obviously, that I'm not necessarily finding because we're just doing a high impact check. Okay. So in this case, we would just be, what this error is telling us is, hey, there's something that has a table structure, but these header rows and columns, so in this case, we have last year and this year, those are a header row, and then the different categories of class, so CS, English, Econ, I'm guessing, Eco, those are all headers as well. And this is telling us, this wave is telling us that there is not any header structure there. And that's why it's telling us that, hey, I have a layout table. Now we could have a whole conversation about layout tables, but in general, you want to use tables to actually represent data like this one is, instead of trying to make something look a certain way. But you do sometimes see layout tables used and they don't actually need headers. And that's where you'd want to make sure and look at something like the reading order. And that's another area where I think the styles pane or turning the styles on and off would help you with that as well. Okay, so we found our table issue. I'm going to go log that one real quick. So table on course data is missing table headers. That is the error that we're going to log for this one. And then the next thing we'd want to do, and this is where I really love the built-in icons on the page themselves. We have these little things that look like lists. So this little icon that looks like lists. So what we can do is kind of scan through the content and determine, hey, are there any things that look like they should be lists? Are there groupings of items? And if so, we want to see one of these list icons next to them. So this page is a little more complex potentially because there aren't any things that are just kind of like lists of items. What they are using lists for, and there's several, if we kind of go back over to our details pane, we have 7 unordered lists and 1 ordered list. So ordered means numbered and unordered just means bullets. And that's another one of our checks if we go back to our Google Doc there. We're trying to make sure that the actual, the whether it's marked ordered or unordered is correct. So if it's something that needs an order, we want to make sure it's ordered. And that's another way we can use our tool. But anyway, what they're marking as list on this page are actually the menus and then the slideshow buttons. So that is not the best use of that structure, but it is something we see pretty commonly. So it's not something that I would note as an issue in this particular thing, just because I don't think it's going to present a big barrier. It's not going to stop someone from getting to content. So anyway, that would be something I would pass in this case. So if we go back to our findings section, I'm not going to need to mark any list issues on this one. But that is how we can use Wave to identify tables and lists and whether they are truly supposed to be tables and if they have headers or if they're needing to be lists and whether they have the right list structure and or a list structure at all. Okay, any questions there? All right.
No questions. And we have about, I don't know, 17 more minutes to the end or
Nice.
16 to the hour.
Perfect. Okay.
We do have a question. Sorry. When a list is found as hidden, they'll still be read by screen reader, right?
Yes, that is a good question. And this one's kind of hard to answer just because it's going to depend on some stuff in the code, whether it's actually displayed, but it's likely the things that well, if we turn our styles off and we kind of look through the things that were hidden, it looks like it's the menus. So in this case, I would say because that content is supposed to be visible and it's not something that's being hidden by via code for a screen reader, then yeah, it's going to be read out. So that's a good question. I hope that answers it in a concise enough way without getting too complicated. All right, any other questions? Got just a couple more Some of these checks do go a lot faster than others. But okay, we're gonna move on. And again, I know this is a lot to fit in an hour. I was worried about my pacing. Like I said, life has been lifing. So I am more than happy to answer questions a little bit late if we need to, or if you want to just email me, I'm absolutely happy to do that. Or in the Slack channel, obviously. All right, we'll move over to our color contrast. So the things we're testing here, we're using that wave contrast tab, so it does have its own tab, but we're mainly using that to check text contrast because it will not actually check text contrast on things like background images. So those big heroes that you see, like the slideshow has in this case, it will not check the text contrast on things like that. We also would need to check mainly contrast of buttons and other interactive elements. So that needs a different layer of contrast. The page we're testing doesn't have a lot of that on it, but I will tell you, and I need to add this. So, hey, look, we're going to do that. I forgot that piece. Interactive buttons, though, they do have another contrast requirement on them, and that's 3:1. So we're going to move over to our contrast tab. And we see about 4 errors that it's pulling up. And someone already mentioned those, so you caught that early. But these menu items, the text has low contrast. So we'd be testing that light gray with that little bit darker gray. And one thing that's really great about Wave, if you click on any of these errors, it's going to actually show you a sample. So you can kind of verify if it's using the right colors, because sometimes if you have something that's coded kind of more complicated in a more complicated way where they're kind of using different layers, I don't know, layers to kind of make something look a certain way, it may actually have the wrong contrast value. So sometimes for menu items like this, it's actually checking on a white background, but it's actually on a gray background. And that's the visual thing that you're seeing. So that's why sometimes you have Wave pulling up errors that aren't really errors because it's only able to do what it can do. And in that case, it would be testing the wrong 2 colors together. So this is always something you have to still check. But our sample does look correct. It's showing that light gray and darker gray. And we could confirm that these are actual contrast errors. So some things that we could check for contrast as far as that non-graphic and that the text contrast, we would need to test this text over that background image. And that's where we can use our built-in contrast checker. We'll use our color pickers and we can kind of select that white text. Oh, can use the keyboard to do this as well. Oh, I always hit the wrong thing.
We have a question when you're ready.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah, go for it. I
Do you
can't.
also, sorry, do you want it now? Do you want it now? Do you also need to check in light versus dark themes?
Yes, great question. You definitely do. That gets into some really complex testing. And color is, just like anything that we've talked about today, all of these topics can have their own session. But yeah, if you have access to different contrast tools, so like I know Chrome lets you kind of change some of the colors, it's at least worth a look, you know? Um, right now, WCAG isn't super clear on that necessarily, but it is a good practice to test in light versus dark themes. So great question. Okay. So I was having trouble, and I knew I was going to have this problem, but we found this bug the other day too, and so now I think I'm in my head about it, where it's not actually, yeah, if I try to close it, that's the problem. So let me figure my stuff out real quick, and then I'm gonna click off of that. Okay, now it kept the color. I was hitting the escape key, and that was making the color revert to the original color. So that was the problem I was having. So don't hit the escape key if you're using this color picker. There was a Chrome bug, also in Edge, and I think it's still kind of hanging around. So we found that issue the other day, and I was getting confused. So we would basically need to go test using this tool for that white color is pretty light. So your kind of shortcut here is testing the lightest colors that are next to that white with the white color. So I picked a random like color of this brick. There's some kind of pinks in there too. So anyway, but you would want to test a variety of those colors around it and see how those are doing. So in this case, we have contrast ratio of 2.38 to 1. And for this size of text, we could probably assume it was maybe 3 to 1 because it's a little higher. But hey, we're doing a high impact assessment. And I feel like it's always easier to just go for 4.5 to 1 contrast if you can. Now, I used to work for a school called Oklahoma State University, and it was the America's Brightest Orange. Orange is a really difficult color to make accessible, so their versions of orange only worked with 3 to 1 contrast. So I understand that there are some limitations when it comes to branding. But anyway, always shoot for 4.5 to 1. All right. So that is how we would test any text that's kind of on a background color, that we're going to test the color. If it's a dark color, test the darkest colors against it. And then if it's a light color, check the lightest colors against it. But you do need to kind of get a variety because the majority, at least, of that, and this is where, again, WCAG's not super specific on this for good reason. But that's kind of your shortcut. We just want to make sure everything's as visible as possible, though, right? That's the whole goal with this. Also, I just noticed they have a misspelling. Did anyone else see that? Have to email those folks. Okay. We would also maybe want to check, like as far as non-text content, these are buttons that do need to be seen against their background. So this is something we could test as well, and that would need that 3 to 1 contrast. So I'm not going to do that just for the sake of time, especially since my color picker is being a little bit picky for me, being user error. All right. Anyway, any other questions on color contrast while we're there? I'm going to go back over to our guide. These last three are pretty quick. Okay, I'll move on. I wish Zoom showed typing. That's my biggest pick with Zoom. Okay, so for buttons and links, basically we want to make sure, and I know Jacob talked a ton about this in his talk the other day, so if you haven't seen that presentation, definitely go do that. But we want to make sure that when someone's going over this site with assistive technology like a screen reader, that all of these things that are interactive have a name that describes what they're doing. We also want to make sure that they have, and this is for folks who are using like Dragon to kind of navigate, then we want to make sure that that label, so the thing that's visible there is actually the same as what's in the name that the assistive technology sees. So we can do that really easily with our order tab. This is actually something that's newer in Wave, which is really great. But this is a way it kind of exposes the what we call accessible name. So that's the more technical term for it. But if you ever see accessible name, then that's the name that is going to be understood by assistive technology. All right, so we are going to look through. Let's look at, instead of looking at the, most of these are links, and this will also tell you what type of thing it is. So that's other good information for you to have. There's some other tests we could do with that if we wanted to, but we will not for today. But we're basically going to click through these and say, all right, are these accurate? We're going to start with this about here. So all those look right. About, news, and those are the ones that are hidden. But anyway, let's get down to something that looks kind of interesting though. All right, so we have the link, click here. This is technically a link, and so I didn't necessarily include this in this check, but if you want to, you can kind of wrangle this one in because I know link names kind of really bug some folks more than others, but that doesn't really describe what's going on with that link, right? So we probably would want it to be more descriptive, and this tool really shows that, illustrates that. We have 3 click here's next to each other. We get down to number 16, we click on that one, and that's our name field. So what this is telling us is that this is a form field that doesn't have any name. So we actually cover forms specifically in the next one, but this tool can help you with those forms as well. We have checkbox inputs. Those also have no accessible name. We get down to our submit. So that's a button, and that one should say submit in both places. So the visual says submit, and we're just kind of making sure that the actual name of it is submit, and that is what we're saying. All right, and then next thing, see, I think those are just links down below. We didn't really have a lot of interactivity on this one. And we would also be needing to check these buttons if they were keyboard accessible, but you're not seeing them in this order panel because they're not interactive, right? So that is something that would, once these were fixed, we'd still need to be checking those names to make sure that they made sense. So we would need these to say previous slide or next slide or something like that. Okay. Let me,
We have
oh, I
about
did
5 minutes, so I
5 minutes
don't know
out.
if there's one you want to
Yeah.
jump, maybe
Jump
skip
through
and let
next.
people come
Yeah.
back to, or yeah.
Yeah, so the forms, I think the forms are, and again, you'll have this access to this. And I have another thing I'm going to add to this once. I'll talk about that just briefly in a second. The forms, though, the other thing I wanted to kind of make sure about is using that same tool. So in the order, we have our text inputs, and we would want to know if any of these are required. So technically, that accessible name should have some indication that required fields exist. So that's another thing you could use this tool for to check. And then the rest of it is kind of covered just by the same test we were doing with the buttons and the links, looking at that specifically. So in this case, we would have some findings. So none of the form fields have accessible labels. All right. There's also, we could make sure, we kind of need to make sure that there's like visible labels as well. Some people use placeholders for forms. And this is something that I think does have a pretty big impact for people with cognitive disabilities in particular. When that placeholder disappears, they may not remember what needs to go into that field. So that is a quick piece on forms. And then we have image alt text. So this one again is real quick. Most of you said you're pretty comfortable with accessibility testing. So I think the most important thing here is to just show you kind of how you can check this. So Wave will show you errors for any images that are fully missing alt text. It will show you the alt text itself if there is alt text. And in this case, we have an interesting one where it's trying to tell you, hey, there's some alt text here, but I don't know that this is the right alt text. So that's why it's showing up as a yellow alert, um, because it's recognizing it's a file name. So that is something that's exposed, which is really nice. But if you're looking at the in-page view on Wave, um, like I said, it will show you the errors and alerts, but the main thing I wanted to point out is that you can use it directly on the page to just verify that the alt text makes sense. So for this, we would actually want it to say like accessible university. For the alt text, if we get down to, there's a bunch of like 3 slides that are missing alt text. So those would need to be described. That's just a regular image. Describe the context of it. And then lastly, we have decorative images. So these down here are, these are also suspicious, and that's because it's picking them up. It's reading that horizontal line. So the folks at WebAIM have been around the block enough to know that horizontal line is probably decorative. So they've flagged that one as being something that can potentially be an alert. Not, you need to check it though. So we would need to make sure that these are actually given an empty alt text, and we will also tell you if that's the case. But these are, and you can use the accessible version if you want to see what that looks like. If it's done properly, it should just not show up at all. Okay, that is pretty much it. So we did have some, there is one error. So somebody asked about the CAPTCHA. So the CAPTCHA is missing alt text. So that would definitely be something we would lock down in our findings. And that would just need to describe exactly what was in that image. So we could again have a whole thing on alt text, and I am at a minute out. So what I wanted to do, if you're thinking about scoping, just you don't need to do the whole website. Choose 3 to 5 pages. Always do the home page and think about your most visited pages, and then the VIP pages are things like a login or something that is the reason why people come to your site, right? So normally you'll find that websites use these same things along all of the pages. So find the ones that represent those buckets. They're also called components. So a calendar that's used in one place on your application is probably the same calendar that's used in another place. So you can think of it like that too. but just kind of find the most unique content, the most important stuff, and then that is what you include in your review. So hopefully this has given you a method to follow. I do feel like I really ran out of time and I'm so sorry, but you'll have access to that Google Doc and you'll have, that's my brain right there. Those are the checks that I do. And the little thing I meant to add that I haven't so far, I wanted to give you an Excel sheet that has all these things in it so that you can use that if you want it and instead of having it in multiple tabs. So look for that by the end of the day. If not today, it'll be by the end of the week and I'll pop that back into Slack. So you'll have that if you want to use it as an actual checklist. So
Thank you
that,
so much, Lyssa. Everyone, this is wonderful. Lots of thank yous. Thank you so much. A lot of informative, very approachable session. Great reminder. The incremental change is still change. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, let's pop that in. Appreciate your time and your expertise. I love WebAIM. We all love WebAIM. WebAIM trained me. That's where I first, learned to do testing. And say hello to Jonathan Whiting for me, and the team. So thank you so much. And Lyssa's email is there for you. And there's also some really great resources to any educators out there. She's got, I'm going to say it wrong, but you're just going to try and pop it in the chat.
yeah, I'll pop it in the
Academy.
chat.
So if you're K-12 and you work with accessibility, take a look at this resource if you haven't seen it yet. All right, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you, Lyssa.
Thank you.